So it's a pleasure to be with you again, Michael. I wanted to ask you a bit about your work in mindfulness over the last couple of decades. One question that occurs is, has it been working?
Okay, so yeah, has it been working? Personally, I've conducted a small amount of research. So we've looked at the impact of 8 weeks of mindfulness training on senior business leaders. Now, this was with a relatively small sample size and just under, I think, 80 odd people. So we can't, extrapolate very hugely from that. But with the people we worked with, training people in mindfulness over 8 weeks, two cohorts of senior business leaders, we found significant change in those who practiced mindfulness for 10 minutes or more each day. I won't go into the results. People can look that up on the internet. It's easily available. But yeah, so yes, in that sense, it was working. And at 3-month follow-up, we found that things were continuing for many of those people to work. They felt that it was continuing to change them. So that's that particular side of it, mindfulness in relation to leadership and at work, you could say. But there's a huge body of evidence now around beneficial changes for people in relation to relapsing depression, in relation to stress, in relation to chronic pain. That was one of the things that really, really interested me when I first came upon clinical mindfulness. I was bowled over by the kind of change that seemed to be showing up for people who engaged in structured mindfulness practice with a teacher over just 8 weeks. I really couldn't believe that much change, that those sort of intense shifts in life experience were taking place over such a short period of time. But the data really does bear it out.
Mm-hmm. And with the work that you're starting now, in a way, introducing awakening more into the picture or inviting it more into the picture, what is the difference that makes the difference? Because, we hear a lot about mindfulness and how it can help you relax into the moment. What makes the difference with awakening?
Oh, huge question. So look, in 8 weeks, all being well, and sometimes all isn't well, but all being well, people experience radical shifts in their ability to work with their mind and their mental states. In particular, people develop these 3 characteristics that we've called AIM: allowing, inquiry, meta-awareness, allowing the ability to let what is the case be the case, to let others be who they are, to let oneself be who one currently is, to let the situation be what it is now, this moment. I always say that when you can allow this moment to be what it is, as it actually is, then choice opens up for you. It's like this, now what? And the now what for me is always, well, what would be best? Best for me, best for others, best for the situation. So that's the A in allowing, AIM, A. The inquiry piece is interest, curiosity, engagement in the present moment. What's happening right now in my own mind? What's happening right now? What's happening right now in the context I'm in? What's happening right now with the person I'm with? What is it? What's it like now? So it's a present moment engagement. And the M is meta-awareness. This ability to step ever so slightly back from the stream of thoughts, feelings, impulses, and to see them as a stream of thoughts, feelings, and impulses, to recognize that your thoughts are just thoughts, that they're not actually facts. And the ability to unstick yourself, if you like, from a thought stream, to go, oh, I'm thinking, I don't need to be thinking. I could, for example, be following my breath in meditation. So it's AIM is one of the big outcomes that we find people develop over just 8 weeks, and that is life-changing. That is life-changing. But it only goes so far in just 8 weeks for the very large majority of people. There's only so much you can achieve in just 8 weeks. But if you can keep going with these capacities, with allowing, with inquiry, with meta-awareness, and add in the capacity or the interest in reflection, reflection on the nature of things, then things can begin to change in interesting ways. When you start to bring aim and its capacity for taking a different view on the flow of mental events to bear on an understanding of how events arise in a conditioned manner, and that there is no essence underlying the event, there's a flow of conditions. When one can begin to observe the flow of conditions with an attitude informed by aim, then things really start to change. It's a very different way of experiencing them. When you're mindful and you have a little bit of sustained mindfulness over time, if you keep on practicing within a context of sustained mindfulness over time, and in my case, that would be in conditions of retreat initially, because you really are now beginning to practice fairly intensively. In those kinds of retreat conditions where you've set up the conditions for being able to observe your mind at work, gradually the mind can calm. It may or may not happen. You can't strive for it, you can't force it, you can't set it up as a goal, but it may happen. And with a calm mind, turning that calm mind towards ideas of interdependence conditioned arising, then I think awakening can follow. It's certainly, that's my experience. Awakening experiences for me emerge in those conditions. No.
So mindfulness is something like the paying attention and the being able to sustain a paying attention.
Well, I wouldn't make it quite so active. I wouldn't think of mindfulness in that way as being quite so active. It's paying attention is a condition for the arising of mindfulness, you could say. So mindfulness is the quality that emerges, the quality of awareness that emerges when you pay attention in a certain way. So mindfulness is that quality of attention. Now, in retreat conditions for me, the mindfulness over time starts to take on a kind of life of its own. And I don't need to be trying to be mindful, if you like, or don't need to be doing anything to be mindful. I'm simply being more mindful. It's just become the way of being on that retreat, as it were. Then, under those conditions, the mind can begin to calm. So it's not as if I am trying to be mindful. I find myself being mindful.
You do mindfulness practice, and then you find yourself being mindful.
Yes.
And then the bit that I'm interested in is the extra between mindfulness and awakening, and that seems to be about paying attention to the nature of things in experience.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. Yes.
And does that need ideas, or is there a practice that you do?
Well, for me it has needed ideas. For me, the understanding of interdependence has a conceptual framing. There's coming to a sort of conceptual understanding that this is actually how things work. And being in some ways kind of convinced of that conceptual understanding, so that, yeah, this is how things are. This is how things are. But that's not yet a lived understanding. So a conceptual understanding and a lived understanding, they're separate. And then using that conceptual understanding as a framework for exploring experience, that's where things begin to unfold. It's the exploration of experience.
So is this, we had one of the videos talking about the art of reflection and all this, and is that where you're holding, in a way, an understanding in mind, but also paying attention to experience and somehow feeling the connections or feeling, is it this kind of practice?
That makes great sense to me.
Yeah.
That really does. That's nicely put.
Yeah.
I think it's you pay attention to your experience in the light of. You pay attention to your experience in the light of your conceptual understanding.
Yeah. And there are discoveries then.
Absolutely. And then they start to reflect each other.
Yeah. And in order to have that discovery, you need to, as a prerequisite, you need to be present. You need to be...
Exactly. You need to be present. You need to have your mind at least sufficiently calm.
Yeah.
And ideally, you're not talking to yourself about yourself all the time, because that's what the default network's having us do. It's always just chattering away. In some ways, in this respect, kind of getting in the way and inhibiting the unfolding of that experience.
Yeah. One of my friends was asking me recently, so in these practices of awakening, what is success? How can you tell if you're doing it right?
Okay. First marker of success is you stop thinking in terms of success. How would you know you're doing it right? It's so strange. I mean, I'm not sure I know, because I've always just followed my own nose in this business for myself. All I can speak about is my own journey, really. And in my own journey, what I've done has been just mainly to follow my nose, to feel my way.
In this practice that we've been discussing,
I mean, what I've done for a very, very long time is reflected on my experience in the light of my conceptual and intellectual understandings, and tried to bring those together, but not like striving to bring those together, but just it's a gentler process. For me, it's a gentler process.
Does it get boring? I mean, are you using the same idea all the time?
Well, it's never boring. Life cannot be boring. Boy, it can't be boring. It's not as if there's an idea one is using. Look, the main thing is you're paying attention to experience. And that is really quite extraordinary. Being alive is extraordinary. Being human is really extraordinary. Other humans are extraordinary. The living world is extraordinary. So there's a continual drama to pay attention to. It can never be boring. Yeah. I mean, in a way, do I ever get bored? Well, if I'm being continually distracted away from attention, that can get boring. But paying attention, that's lovely.
I even heard one definition of boredom is not paying attention.
Exactly. Exactly.
So with these practices of mindfulness and the practice of supporting awakening, are there any downsides that you're aware of?
Yeah, there can be. So I had a colleague, a fellow mindfulness teacher, who found on a retreat that she'd got herself into quite a state, that I'm not sure exactly what happened for her, but her sense of herself became quite significantly destabilized, and she found it very, very, very unsettling for quite a while. It took a while of not practicing anything for her to find her feet again, you could say. And that happens not even pursuing the stuff that we've been talking about going beyond the self, if you like, but just through doing mindfulness practice. And there is a researcher in the States at Brown University, Willoughby Britton, who's looked into this area quite a bit and found, yes, there are significant numbers. I wouldn't say huge numbers, but there are people who find mindfulness practice, and certainly the practices that we've been discussing, destabilizing in ways that aren't helpful to them. So it could be that if people have a kind of vulnerability of any sort, a psychological vulnerability of any sort, they need to approach this stuff with great care, with great caution.
And if difficulties do start showing up, do you have any recommendations?
I think if such difficulties do show up, I think it could be really useful to look around for some professional help in this area. Someone who's got some therapeutic experience in working with people for whom that has happened. And I personally don't have any recommendations that I know myself in this field, but I'm sure that could be helpful.
I was wondering about, so you're expressing this interest in awakening and your own practice in awakening in the context outside of these religious frames, which are often very hierarchical, and you've spoken about a conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, well, I mean, is there a hierarchy within that conversation? Because obviously some people have something, some experience to express. And
do you know, in my understanding, there is no fixed hierarchy. I don't have much truck with a fixed hierarchy. I think in a conversation there may be a hierarchy. It might emerge in the conversation. Look, sometimes when I'm in conversation with someone I'm looking up, they're saying something really wise and I need to pay attention to this, I'm learning from them. Sometimes in conversation with someone I'm looking horizontally, you know, we're just, you know, connecting together. We're mutually informing one another's understandings. And sometimes I'm aware that I've got stuff to impart, that there's something useful I can say which may or may not help this person, but I'm going to try to express it in a way that may be helpful to them. Sometimes I'm trying to help, sometimes I'm learning, sometimes we're sharing. Let's put it like that. And that's always changing, always changing. Even with the same person. Even with the same person. Yeah. So I have no truck with the idea myself of a fixed hierarchy. I don't, I'm deeply suspicious of the idea of a fixed hierarchy. And I absolutely don't want to find myself put in a position in any kind of, as if I were always up. I'd find that deeply embarrassing and awkward. But yeah, let's engage in a conversation and let it go where it goes. You know, and if you've got stuff to teach me, I'm really interested in learning. If we've got stuff to share, I really want to share. And if there's ways I can help, I really want to help. Let's make the conversation like that.